I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, November 13th, 2023, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome members of the community here tonight to observe the important work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. Tonight we have the Powerhouse Director of Finance, Val Murdister, helping facilitate tonight's meeting. We have some items in the table file. Would you care to update us?
Sure. Yep. We have 2 items in the table file. There are some personnel items, appointments, increase and change in assignment, and then a recommendation for an addition to co-curricular.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, moved by Jeff, second by Jenny. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now on to the public comment portion of our meeting. Anita, are there any individuals signed up? No. Okay, we'll move on to announcements and recognitions.
There are no announcements or recognitions tonight.
Very good. Okay. Yes, please.
I just wanted to congratulate the theater department and all of our student actors and Bob Gregory Bjorklund for a successful run of 12 Angry Jurors.
Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. Okay, item 5 is items for discussion and reports. And first off, we have Director of Instructional Services, Hope Langston, who will present a summary of the 2023-2024 World's Best Workforce Plan. As well as let the community know of any feedback that we received. Okay, Hope.
Okay, the summary of our plan is that we did reach the 3rd grade reading goal. We came very close to reaching the ACT percentage of students ready in all 4 areas. I'm going to just move ahead to the summary slide. And yeah, so we set new goals for the for this year, 23, because we are always reporting 1 year behind, and have action steps in place to do what we can to achieve each world's best workforce area.
Good. Board members, do you have any questions or comments to make to Hope? Okay, Amy.
I have several questions for you. I always love hearing all of your facts and figures. Thank you for the presentation. And it's always interesting to see our goals. And I think it's good that we have goals that are within reach, but maybe take a little extra work. It's good that we're not meeting everything. That might mean it's too easy. I'm curious about the first benchmark of the kindergarten readiness.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know more than just that they're free and reduced price lunch status or whatever? Do we know what types of students are not making the benchmark? Is it students who stay at home and don't go to daycare or preschool? Is it kids who are in daycare? Do we have a sense of sort of what their background of those kids who aren't reaching the that readiness goal before they come to kindergarten?
Yes, in fact, we do. So one of the pieces of our enrollment packet is a preschool history. And we've been doing this for a long time now, years, where it has been part of the enrollment packet. And what we do with that data is that we then have attendance data from our preschools. And so we cross match those two, like what parents are reporting, what was actually happened. We don't have attendance rosters from every preschool, but we have data sharing agreements with the major ones in town. And so we know where most of our kids go now. Since we've placed that form as part of the enrollment packet, we virtually are missing maybe less than 10 kids every year where we don't have a history. So with that, we are able to look at preschool attendance and testing outcomes, right? Most of our kids go somewhere. They're either going to a preschool or an in-home daycare, but it's very few, I would say 6% on average a year of kids who don't attend any kind of preschool or daycare setting. We did have Carlton do a stats consulting project on that very question you're asking, Amy, that given that we know where our kids go to preschool, are we seeing a difference in outcomes depending on where they attended? And in fact, we did not. So we know that our kids from challenged demographic tend to show up at an overrepresentation in the not ready group, right? But there is not any significant finding about which preschool in town dictating your performance on the kindergarten readiness screener. Does that answer your question?
It does, and it wasn't the answer I was hoping for. So
We were kind of surprised by that finding too. Now, Carlton did that study pre-pandemic, right? We have this wall now and we could have them look at that again. But that was a finding that there was no significance identified to the preschool attendant.
because it seems like it's such an important measure to get students started on the right foot, that if we had some way of focusing on where the more likely
And
backgrounds were.
yeah, and that's why we started collecting that data over a decade ago. I will say that our early ventures, and I neglected to say this on in the presentation prior to the board meeting, but the early ventures kids at NCEC this year, for the second time, 100% of those kids met the kindergarten readiness benchmark, which is unusual, right? We typically don't see 100% of any population doing anything, right? But that's the second time that has happened.
Congratulations to Erin and her whole staff for making that happen. I was also wondering about that kindergarten test. Is it language biased? You know, if you come in and you're a Spanish speaker, are you going to have a problem taking this test? And could those same kids have then passed it if it was in Spanish?
I would say that, yes, that is possible. But what we do have the ability to give that assessment in Spanish. And so one of the great things about STAR, and we are using it more and more as we have newcomers move into the district, is that we are able to test in Spanish. And we are seeing some really solid performance in the native language of Spanish for a lot of our kids that have recently enrolled, which allows us to know that it's going to make it easier for them to learn, right? Because they have a solid base in their native language. So we do have the ability to look at that. If the student is coming in with a language other than Spanish, we may not have them take that test right away. We wait and then and try and gauge their readiness in other ways.
Okay. I then wanted to ask a question about the attendance differential. Do we know why students aren't attending?
Well, we know what attendance codes we collect, right? So, and I just was at a poster presentation at Carlton this afternoon because they're working on an attendance project for us. So students, when they miss school, we make every effort to find out why, right? And then there's codes within our student information system that tell us they are ill, they had an appointment, they had car trouble. There's a number of codes. We've worked really hard to make sure they're consistent across buildings so that we can look at this as a system. So for the most part, we know why students are absent. Then there are some unexcused, and that's where you see this effort to really track down and make a connection with every family to find out what it is that's causing, a barrier to school attendance. And that's where our navigators will come into play. But I think we have a pretty decent knowledge of why kids aren't attending. And then when we don't, we have resources that we can allocate to find out why.
You have one more question, Amy?
Yeah, I actually have a couple more,
Okay,
but
let me check in and let you proceed if nobody else has a question. Jenny, Jeff, Corey, no question? Question, Jenny? Thanks, Amy.
Okay. Thank you, Hope, for delivering the state required plan to us. I have a few questions. One is regarding the third grade reading goal. So it's mentioned in the narrative that we have the bridge to read and the 95% core phonics implemented. Is that new this year? Are
It's
those
new
two-
this year. So that wouldn't have played into what happened last year. What would have played into what happened last year is the high number of teachers we had letters trained. And even though we didn't have a high number of third grade teachers letters trained, what you saw is just discussion and movement around what we're doing in literacy overall, right? Whether you're letters trained or not.
Okay, so those two programs are they a part of the READ Act requirements, or is that just something that we took on our own?
What we did was look at the data and then as a work team discuss like where are the holes that we are seeing in our kids. And encoding, formerly known as spelling, is one of them. And also the ability to decode multisyllabic words and understand their meaning. And so that is what kind of drove us to what's out there to help us address those needs, because our core curriculum, which is CCC, which you've heard about, is not super strong in that area, especially in grades 3 through 5. So I really credit the work team for digging into what are our holes, right? And what are our student needs, and really trying to address that.
Okay, being that it's so new, and a lot of work went into researching the programs and selecting which we feel might be most beneficial to our district. Is that kind of a long-term, are these two programs going to be long-term, or is it just something that we're implementing now and then it's kind of, we're going to wait and see how our goals were met and then change things around or not?
That's a great question. And here's what's going to happen. The READ Act is going to dictate what we use to teach literacy. So in January, MDE, in conjunction with Carrie at University of Minnesota, is going to issue, well, here are 5 curricular choices. It's a big deal for Minnesota, right? And we will select one that we think best meets our need. We don't know yet what's going to be on there. Will we still have a place for that's going to be a longer runway, right? So we know that they're not going to come out with that list in January and say, you got to implement by September. It will likely be September of 25, right? So we know for the next 2 years, we're going to stay the course, right? With what we're doing, because we believe we're seeing good results, even after 1 quarter. And so, so long-term, I can't tell you yet because I don't know what the state is going to select.
I'm guessing we'll hear a little bit about that from you next year.
Or, later this year. Yeah.
Okay. And then I would be moving on to the career and college readiness piece and that goal. I noticed here in the narrative that all steps and metrics are more college oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any steps that are career oriented?
So when we offer the ACT to all juniors, which we're required to do by state legislation, we started a number of years ago giving students a choice. And so all students have the choice to take the ACT, take the AccuPlacer, which is typically used if you're going to go to community college or technical college, or the ASVAB for the military. So, and it's been pretty steady. It's about 30 kids per year that will choose one of those other pathways. But we feel like we knew as soon as the state made this mandatory in 2016 with the class of 2016, that we had to offer the ACT. That was pretty clear early on that it wasn't the right test for everybody. And the state sort of backed off on we're going to pay for it all to you have to offer it. And so we made that adjustment just looking at the student need and desire, right, for which pathway they want to choose. But in terms of other career metrics, we don't have any other system metrics in place right now that would allow us to efficiently measure readiness. We feel like the ACT is probably the best measure that we have right now for post-secondary readiness of whatever sort, right? So that's why we landed on those two.
Okay. And then still in the college and career readiness goals, you have listed the middle school AVID program. Is that 6th through 8th graders are eligible for that?
7th and 8th graders.
7th and 8th.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what percentage would you say of 7th and 8th graders are participating in AVID?
It's one class per grade level, so it's about anywhere for up to 30 kids. I think there's 27 in it right now. I could be wrong on that, but
So around 30 7th and 8th graders, or in each?
in each grade level. Yeah.
Do you have one more question, Jane?
Yeah. Yes. You want me to hold off?
I just want to check in with everyone else too. Yeah, and I know Amy has some more too. You want to ask questions? Okay, I do have one question, or actually I have a couple here. Looking at slide 7, actions with impact, and I know that you use this heading actions with impact on all of the goals. I want to say I appreciate that language because it speaks about things that are already in place. And so we're not talking about let's experiment and try something new and see if we can move that percentage. And so to that, I wanted to hear you kind of explore that if these are the actions and the programs that we're already using, and we got to that, you see where I'm going here, we got to that percent, 64%. What can you explore a little bit? What will take place to see the goal move to 70%?
This one, kindergarten readiness is a little bit tougher, right? Because we don't have control over the birth to 4.9 time of life, right? So we know that we can impact Aaron's programming, right? Because again, the preschool enrollment data showed us the highest majority of our kids go to hand in hand or early ventures, right? So that is where we say, all right, let's look at letters training for that stuff, or let's look at Haggerty. But the other thing is these things take time to work. And I think Aaron's staff, having been to PLC meetings there, are doing different things at the classroom level that maybe aren't reflected here, right? That are new things. But as a system, as a district, we know that these are growing kids, and so we're gonna leave them right now, and we're gonna continue to see what other the impact it continues to have post-COVID, and the operative word being post-COVID, because we know, and I think Aaron would agree, that we're still seeing some impacts of kids who stayed home for those COVID years. And so I want to give a little more time to see what happens to incoming kids.
I think I can appreciate that. And then slide 14, you talk about high impact. Let me get there. High impact instructional practices. And I think you did go into it. Can you remind me again what that means, high impact instructional?
So those are specific techniques that teachers can use to most effectively increase student achievement. So it's things like explicit teaching, or it's things like setting goals with students. So those are the two that we focused on this first semester. The high school is looking at all 10, which I'm not sure I can rattle off the top of my head, but just know that they are specific instructional techniques that we know make the most impact, because they take into account learning from cognitive science about how the brain operates when it's learning new things.
Good, thank you so much. Okay, Amy, do you want to ask a couple?
I'll just ask one more. So I have a question about the graduation rate, and I
Mhm.
think I know how you're going to answer it. I'm going to ask it anyway.
Mhm.
First of all, what a great graduation rate for our high school. That's fantastic. But looking at the ALC is where our at-risk kids are, and many of them need extra time to get through high school.
Mhm.
So is this 4-year graduation rate a requirement of the state, or could we measure the ALC with a 5-year graduation rate?
At this point, our everything that's reported statewide is the 4-year rate. Now, Daryl, and we just worked on this, Daryl tracks very closely that 5, 6, and 7-year rate for his kids. And has a nice table built, and he maybe actually shared it. But we do track that, and we know that, and you've heard me say this before, and then I'll say it forever. Every single kid that comes out of that ALC who walks that stage is a win, right? Because, and so I think, when you look at this and you say, well, 60% of the kids, well, that's 60% of kids who maybe wouldn't have graduated had they not attended the ALC. So the 4-year rate is what is used by MDE. And if you recall, they worked really hard to get an ESSA exemption for ALCs, and it was denied by the federal government. So we're kind of stuck here right now until there's some other movement at the federal level.
Sort of on a related question, I know we have an ALC that brings in a lot of students from other districts. So is that helping our graduation rate at the ALC or hindering it?
I don't know that I could answer that accurately right now, but I'd be happy to look into it for you. I know that we've had an influx in the past. I'm not sure that that's true right now. So I would have to just follow up with you, Amy, on that one in particular.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thanks, Amy. Jen, you have a couple?
Sure, I'll just
One
take
check.
Amy's example and whittle it down to one more question. In the action steps related to graduation goal, it's mentioned the family engagement process, but can you just go into a little bit more detail on what that involves relating to the graduation goal?
So Shane has instituted a program called Parents as Partners, where he's bringing groups of parents into the high school to talk about experiences and problem solve. So I know that's one way. They also held other kind of group meetings at the start of the school year to look at issues that the high school is facing to problem solve, right? And I think those would be 2 examples that I can think of right now that the high school is specifically using.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Jeff, you have a question?
Thanks for your reports. I just kind of you mentioned that middle schoolers, that the COVID is really kind of hard on middle schoolers. I'm just kind of wondering, from a perspective of attitude for people in general, or students and parents coming out of COVID. I mean, you've got a lot of data there, and it's just kind of like, how how do you measure or figure out, where do we need to get you, on track? Because it's just being at grade level, I would suppose. And then, just a little bit more comments of, how that was really hard on middle schoolers.
So I think, and now we're far enough out, but we know we're still dealing with the effects and less as we move past COVID. But when you saw those precipitous drops in 8th grade, so you look at 2019, we were in decent shape, right? Not every demographic group, but we were certainly overall looking pretty good. 20, we didn't test. And then 21, you saw this precipitous decline, which continued in 22. So now those cohorts of kids have moved on to high school. Some of them, like the 2 sets of 8th graders, but we are pleased to see the rebound. What we are trying to do structurally at the middle school is figure out, how do you address learning gaps that happened over that course of 2020, 2021, and partially 2022. In a 52-minute period, right? In a middle school day. And I think this is where that MTSS team is really taking a hard look at who the kids are, what do they need, and how do we get those resources to them. So I'm optimistic that we will continue to see an upward trend, but as you can see from the state, you know, middle school in particular continues to lag, right? Did that answer, Jeff? Okay.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Okay, thank you to all of you. Oh,
I was
Val.
just gonna comment, thanks to Hope, and just want to highlight how important the local context is. It's very easy to listen to the state or national narrative, but understanding your local context and being able to share the great things that are happening here is a good win for the district.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great report. Okay, item B is the Early Learning and Adult Basic Education Program updates. Director of Community Education, Erin Bailey, will provide an update. Welcome, Erin.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm happy to be here to present an update on early learning and the adult basic education programs that take place at the Northfield Community Education Center. So just to start, I wanted to give you a state of the Northfield Community Education Center. So first, just highlighting the number of students that we have in each program. So as you can see, adult basic education has 75 students currently. This is one program where we continue to enroll new students continually throughout the year. We have seen increases kind of each week in this program, both with some new to country students, adults that are new to country. Some of them have children that are now in Northfield Public Schools. And then just as more adults learn about the program, we also then have enrolled a few more students in the last couple of weeks as well. Early childhood family education currently has 170 students. In early childhood family education, or ECFE, adults and children are considered the student. And so this is the program where adults and children birth to age 5, you come together, you have some time together and some time separate, but you're both considered a student. When the adult or the parent or adult and child are separate, parents are with our licensed parent educator and receiving parenting support, and then children are with our early childhood teacher. And so this is this program, families register for 3 times a year. It is what is published in our brochure. And so these are our fall session numbers. On December 1st, we will open registration for our winter spring session. These numbers are really exciting to see in ECFE. ECFE is the program that took the largest decline of all of our programs in COVID. If you just think primarily indoors, young children, we saw significant, not just in Northfield, across the state, ECFE programs were really hurt by COVID. So this number is exciting because it's actually a rebound to higher numbers of participation than we had pre-COVID, which is really exciting. It's caused us to add more classes, both in this fall brochure and then what you'll see in the upcoming winter brochure as well. Early Ventures currently has 77 students. We do not have any spots available in Early Ventures right now. In fact, we aren't guaranteeing any spots until September of 2024. Truly, we have a number of our current families who have already let us know they are expecting children in probably the next 6 to 9 months. And so we always take our incoming families first. So if they have a sibling that's already enrolled in Early Ventures, they have first priority, which has a high likelihood to fill all the spots that we're going to have open in June. So we're not promising anybody that it would be new to the program that we would have until September, unless something was to change with those that we're currently expecting. We will open registration for Early Ventures for next year in March of 2024. So that would be for the registration for then in September of 2024. We always take people on the wait list. So almost every classroom has a wait list. So people are always able to be put on the wait list if they were interested. And then Hand in Hand Preschool currently has 163 students. There are some limited slots available. Not every class has a slot open, but we do have some slots that we do continue to enroll in Hand in Hand Preschool, typically up until about spring break, if we have slots available. Registration for Hand in Hand Preschool will also open in March of 2024 as well. We do have 83 staff members at the NCEC. We're currently full, so we don't have any vacancies, which is really exciting to report. Of those 83 staff members, approximately 10% of our staff are bilingual, speaking English and Spanish. And then, as you all know, we have additional programs on site. So the Community Action Center has their food shelf, which is the picture right there. That is open on Thursday nights from 3 to 7. It is a steady stream. We typically have people that start lining up about 1 o'clock to access the food shelf on Thursday nights. So we're always hoping we will have more than one night available. This is really due to a staffing issue for the Community Action Center. So we always hope that we'll have more hours available at that site as well, because we certainly see the need. And then the Healthy Community Initiative staff, primarily the early childhood navigators and some of the Growing Up Healthy staff, are also located at the NCEC, and great supports to our program, helping families access preschool and childcare, fill out paperworks for scholarships, both state scholarships and the county childcare assistance program. So really, truly valuable resources. And then just the ongoing projects. First, the Minnesota Children's Museum, although I will touch base on that because we're much farther along than the last time I've been here. And then we also, which I'll talk about, but we did paint the gym and the cafeteria in late August. And so one of the ongoing, we took out, there's some pictures that you can see the before and after in the gym, but some sound panels need to go back up in the gym. So these, I just wanted to highlight some of the things that happened over the summer at the NCEC. So I'll just go around the pictures. We did purchase some new trikes and bikes with funds that were raised at the NCEC Carnival. So in May, we had our first NCEC Carnival, which was extremely well attended. And so the funds that we raised there, we used to purchase some new toys for in the gym. And you can watch for that event coming back in May of this year, or 2024. We did add a little library outside door number 5. This is the door entrance for Hand in Hand Preschool and Early Ventures. So a high traffic area. The picture in the middle, we did complete the remodel of 2 classrooms that were not part of the original bond project. So this is one of the classrooms that got remodeled this summer. I should say, or partially remodeled. There is flooring that still needs to be completed this upcoming summer. But we did open that classroom then in September. The wood structure is a new play structure on the playground. And then the bottom right picture, we added some paint on walls. So not every room is just a stark white wall. And then some highlights so far this year, certainly the Grove, which is the name we have chosen for the former media center space designed by the Minnesota Children's Museum. And I'll have some pictures coming up. And then as I mentioned, we did paint the cafeteria and gym the week prior to school starting. And these are the before and after pictures. So much like in this building, we did paint over some yellow tile to make it all white. So where you can see on the picture on the left where the old sound panels came down, we will be putting up some bright colored sound panels in the same areas on the left. And we're looking at trying to get that scheduled potentially over winter break. And then we have a building logo as well. And so one of the desires of building staff was to really have a logo, something that could be put on t-shirts, much like the elementary buildings and others do. When we happened to be in this building, we had the Longfellow Lions. And so there was the desire to bring something back that really united the building, both staff and kids. And so with the help of Nuger Communications and a staff team, you can see the logo for the NCEC Critters, which I will say we have names in the building too that are little critters or ladybugs or butterflies. And so it ties nicely with the Grove as well. So here is the Grove that is, I will say 90% done at this point. The most recent installation, if you haven't been over, is as you remember from the Children's Museum, all of these have names. And so is Nest, which is the top left, that was installed the week of October 23rd. And it is a great play area. Those are large bean bags. And so we are in the process of adding books and other areas for cozy reading. I will say when something first gets installed, it is really used. And so cozy reading hasn't quite taken place yet, but there is a lot of fun happening in Nest. Just below that is what we call float. Those tubes force air through them, so you can send scarves and balls. You can change the directions of them, and then they shoot out the top. The picture with all the kids is what we call perch or the tree house. And there's a ramp that leads, I should say all of this is fully accessible, but a ramp that leads up one side. You can, there's twinkly lights underneath, which is also meant to be a play area. There's a hidey hole underneath. There's a hole with a rope that you can climb up to the platform area. There are large leaves of fabric that they can hang over. There's a squirrel in a hidey hole on the top. So truly fun. Above that is an area we call construct. And so those pool noodles, that was just the design children had done that day, but they can connect with each other. They can be built off the wall onto those structures that are on the floor. They can, and then we have some fabric when they want to do forts. So lots of fun things have happened in that area. This is the one area that is not totally completed. So if you are visiting the building, and I am happy to give anyone a tour, especially Amy, who's asked a couple of times of anyone who wants to come to see this space. We currently have the pool noodles stored in some large garbage cans. That is not the ultimate plan. But for the ability to vacuum, we do need some times to pick them up. And so we will be installing, they're called noodle trees. They're both a storage device for the pool noodles, but they also are part of the play. So kids can, how they stack them in there and things like that is part of the play too. That is the one thing we are still missing in the space. So when that's done, we'll be at 100%. And then the last picture is in an area of our light play or triangle mirror. Think of it kind of as a fun house mirror. Kids can see lots of versions of themselves. There's a light play table in that space as well. And then one area I just didn't take a picture, we do have a sensory play area too that has a table if classes want to come in or kids want to build in there or paint. And then it also has different sensory bins and kind of rainmakers, if you think, where kids can pour down, and there's different noises that are made through that. So some of the successes. So as we start this school year, we did have 100% of early ventures and hand-in-hand preschool students and families receive an individualized positive contact prior to October 15th. This was part of our school improvement plan. So this isn't the first time you're hearing about this, but really felt that it was positive to have it was important to have a positive comment about children to their families as we start the school year about what is happening in classrooms. In addition, we are in the middle of having in-person conferences at Hand in Hand. So we've had those last Monday, November 6th, and then last Friday, and then this coming Friday as an opportunity. We continue to see in the high 90% of parents participate in conferences in our building, both in Hand in Hand and in Early Ventures. And in Hand in Hand, the vast majority choose to come in person. And so we do still have those conferences in person. Early Ventures is also just wrapping up conferences. Those we moved to Zoom in COVID and have found that those actually work. We have better attendance with those being in Zoom. Early Ventures, again, being our childcare site, there's a parent connection every day, right? Somebody has to drop them off at the door. There's feedback typically given or things shared. And so when parents don't have to leave work in the middle of the day, they've been much more apt to sign on for a 15 or 20-minute conference. And so we've seen higher percentage. So those conferences continue to happen. Those have continued to happen via Zoom. Then this year we added an additional Tuesday, Thursday morning hand-in-hand preschool section. And that was the room that you saw in the previous picture. That section has 17 students enrolled. For an example, 18 would be a full classroom. So it's a pretty full classroom of incoming 3-year-olds. So excited to have that. And kind of that is part of our continued planned growth for hand-in-hand preschool. And then I'm going to do the nurse position first, and I'll jump back. The NCEC nurse position has been just a great addition. So I just finished up in October rounding conversations with staff. It was mentioned frequently, I think, for staff, a relief to be able to not have to care for a sick child potentially in the classroom because there's not a nurse in the nurse's office, to have someone with the skill and knowledge to be able to know what to do in some of the situations has been a real benefit. So that, just so that you know, that has been appreciated at the NCEC. And then as you'll also see on the next slide, the adult basic education student contact hours have increased significantly over last year. So it's a little bit maybe hard to read, but we are currently, our adult basic education student contact hours have increased 48% over last year. And that's a little, this was this graph you're seeing was, I pulled on November 1st, but this would be a little bit even more up to date. For reference, the state will only allow you to grow at 11%. So we are paid each year in adult basic education based on our student contact hours from the previous year. So while it's great to grow this much, if we were to continue growing at this rate, we can't be paid back from the state at the same rate in which we're growing. So it's fantastic to continue to serve adult learners, and we continue to kind of meet in the middle of how to make this work funding wise too, because we're growing at a pace that is just faster than the state will pay at this point. And then some of the challenges. So as you all know, the free breakfast and lunch program, the guidance that was given in May for school districts and that operated both preschools and childcare centers was that everyone in those settings, when they were in a school district facility, qualified. We then learned in late August that actually Early Ventures did not qualify. There was some change in the guidance that only made our preschool setting eligible. Some of the frustration, of course, of this is that we have students that move back and forth. So when those students are in Early Ventures, they do not qualify, but when they walk sometimes 10 feet down the hallway, they are qualifying then in hand. So we are working through this to communicate it with families and just to also advocate at the state level for what this looks like in these settings. Because I think we're a little unique in that we're offering a childcare setting in a school district. There are certainly other districts that do this. They're in the same boat as we are right now. But I think the complicating factor is just not realizing how interconnected these programs truly are, and the kind of the challenges it presents when kids who move back and forth might qualify Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then not qualify on Tuesday, Thursday, or vice versa. So continue to work there. The Great Start compensation grant support. This is essentially what was the former child care stabilization grants. So as you know, since COVID-19, the federal government has been subsidizing child care facilities in an effort to keep them open, while they saw substantial dips in enrollment during the pandemic that just caused significant losses for child care centers. So in November, so last year's legislation that passed in May moved to the Great Start compensation support, which is what the state of Minnesota is now offering, because the federal has moved away and the state signed this into law in May of 2023 to continue to support the childcare industry and those workers. So this is now a permanent program as of June 2023, and it still issues monthly payments. The main difference between what was the former child care stabilization and what is now the Great Start grants is how these payments, what they can be used for. So under the child care stabilization grants, 70% of the payment that you received, and the payment is kind of based on number of students in there and the contact hours of staff with these students, 70% of those payments went back to the employees. So there was kind of an addition to their hourly wage for what the hours they had worked in that time period. And 30% of those payments went to the organization that was operating it, with the understanding you had to show a loss previous to receiving the funds to show that you were not meeting your operating costs at that point. Under the Great Start compensation, 100% of the funds we receive needs to be paid to the employees, which is still fantastic. However, we have at Early Ventures have continued to operate at a loss since the pandemic. And so the challenge is, while I would wholeheartedly support the employees getting most of these funds, they deserve most of these funds. They are the ones working in the childcare setting. It does not help us offset the cost of running a childcare center. We are running a center where staff earn benefits as they should, and where we have high quality staff. We have had our first 2 staff turnovers, and they both left to be teachers. One in 3rd grade and one in kindergarten, which is fantastic, but that was our first staff turnover since 2019 this fall. And that is almost unheard of in a childcare setting, especially through a pandemic. So we certainly would still advocate that the majority of the payments go to the employee, but would like to find a balance that does support childcare centers, because I think we will see another loss of these childcare centers if they don't have some funds to help with their operation. I think we could also, which I hope this doesn't happen, but I think you could see less interest in the organizations applying for these grants because there's not any incentive to support their work. And so essentially there's a lot of work, as Val can attest to, there's a lot of work with coming with these grants, and you do them every month. And so just wanting to make sure that we continue to find something that has long-term stability for the childcare sector. And then just another, as I related challenge, is just the continued loss of childcare slots in the community. In a 6-week time period this summer, 5 in-home childcares in this kind of 20-mile radius of Northfield closed, the farthest out of Northfield being in Webster. So we lost a lot of in-home childcare slots this summer, which typically gives families a 1-month notice to find childcare. And there aren't any slots available right now if you're under 5. And so this is also highly concerning. We have popped up, this region has popped up on Families First radar, to the point where they're hosting an event at the library in early December in the hopes of trying to get anyone interested in starting a family childcare operation. So we continue to try to balance how best to continue to have available childcare slots in this community and then keep them well supported. Transportation needs will, with continued growth in hand-in-hand preschool, does pose a challenge. The schedule for our transportation needs throughout the district is tight. And so whenever we grow in hand-in-hand, it pinches the schedule, right? And so Val and I are continuing to have conversations with Benjamin Buss about this because we want to be able to continue to grow our preschool program, and we want to continue to offer transportation. We're just getting really tight in the schedule because the same buses that run hand-in-hand preschool are also tied to all the other buildings in the district. And so there's a domino effect of how do we get all these students to school. And then lastly, just supporting the changing needs of families and students. And Hope mentioned this a little bit, but this is the class we have that started preschool this year are kids that were born during the pandemic, essentially. And I think we just see some needs both for children and for families. These are often what we're discovering this year, as this early in the year, some of these children have just had less time in group settings. They've probably had more time on devices. Parents were under high stress. They had a newborn baby and there was a pandemic, and probably that thus caused them to make different choices than they had made at any other point in their life. And so just continuing to try to support the needs we see of students and families that rose out of a time that was much more isolating than most of us probably experienced when having young children. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Karen, that was a fantastic report, and that grove looks amazing. Board
Thanks.
members, are there any questions or comments you would like to make? Okay, Amy.
So I have 2 questions for you. The first is sort of harkening back to what Hope was telling us about kindergarten readiness. And I'm wondering if with your ECFE classes, if you have looked at how ready for kindergarten they are and how, because that's yet another cohort. We heard about early ventures and hand in hand, but what about ECFE?
So we could send in a roster for EC. So when we talk about how we tell these cohorts, right, that are ready, is that we take the roster and we analyze can pull on those students. ECFE week, if depending on how the cell size is, the one struggle with ECF, you're certainly not attending the same duration. So I think we'd want to make sure you likely only attend 1, maybe 2 ECFE classes a week. So you're talking about a 2, could we make the case that the 2 hours in ECFE is what's making them kindergarten ready? Does that make sense? And we see some migration frequently at ECFE when they're the year before kindergarten, that they're attending ECFE and they're probably also attending hand-in-hand preschool on some variable schedule. And so then they tend to fall in the hand-in-hand bucket because more of their hours of service are happening there. Does that make sense? Okay.
So does that mean you don't actually
We don't,
consider them?
well, we don't tend to pull just an ECFE cohort. It's a significantly smaller cohort than we're talking about for either early ventures or hand-in-hand preschool. We have kids that are in there that are the year before K, but not as many as we would have in younger years. Does that make sense?
Yes. Definitely. Okay. Just something to think about. And then, of course, I have to ask about the Grove. So my question is the Grove open to the public at all? And when is it open to the public?
Great question. So the Grove is primarily to serve those that are in the building. So during the hours, which we are a school building, which is 6:30 in the morning till 5:30 at night, it serves the students that are in the building. ECFE, hand-in-hand preschool, and early ventures. We do have open nights though that are coming up now in the winter brochure. So they look in the ECFE section and you can see open nights for people to come in and use the space as well. And there'll be ECFE staff there that are available to help show them how to use it and share about the resources in our building. We also have time scheduled. The Healthy Community Initiative was one of our partners on this endeavor, as far as we received some funding from them for that. And so we have some working with Growing Up Healthy, because we did offer some times for family, friend, and neighbor providers and others to come in the building and have space too. We just look at most of that either after the hours of 5:30 p.m. or on weekends.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Question, Jenny?
Thank you, Erin, for the update. I just have 2 quick questions. One, you had mentioned that the NCEC Carnival was your first ever.
Mhm.
Had you ever had any fundraising type events in the past?
On a much smaller scale, like open gyms or holiday make and take while parents could go shopping. So never on the scale of which we had done the carnival.
And it sounds like it was successful.
Yes.
Right.
Kind of
So then-
wildly successful. Yes. So it was held outside in May. There was activities for, so essentially for a very small monetary amount, you could buy a ticket and play activities that were geared to, pre-K to young elementary age. There was a dunk take, there was food, there was lots of activities.
And then are you planning on doing the same event next year?
The committee just told me they met for the first time last week. So I think yes. It will be hard, I think, not to recreate that, even just for the excitement it was for families.
Sure. And then second question is, so you had 163 students hand-in-hand preschool with some limited openings this year. Previously in our last year, was it a wait list only for?
We did get to a wait list at one point. So we did add 18 slots this year. So part of the balance is, right, we added 18 slots with a new preschool section. We weren't full right at the start, I don't believe, but we did get full at some point during, if that makes sense, because we keep adding. I would anticipate the same will happen now. And it happens in a couple of different ways, right? We are either taking in either way, we're taking in new students, but students might be identified through Help Me Grow, or all of our outreach that our special education staff is doing in a number of places. And so they might come in as a student receiving some special education services, or they may come in as a general education student that either didn't enroll at the start of the year or just learned about the program.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Comment or question? Well, Erin, great report. And thank you for sharing about the childcare challenges. We know that that's a huge need, and one of the greatest interventions that we can give
Mhm.
young kids is that quality childcare, whether it's through parents, family, or quality health centers, childcare centers. Also wanted to share with you, I have a colleague who just is new to town and just raved about your staff's support of them.
That's great.
And they didn't get the program that they wanted, but they are still so satisfied with the Thursday night class and just incredibly
That's awesome.
happy with the support that your staff gave them. So
That's
well
great.
done.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we're on item 6, which is the consent grouping. And as a reminder, there was some personnel items in the table file added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Corey, second by Noel. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, items for individual action. We had a third item added in the table file. First off, we have the request to hire additional English learner instructional support at Northfield Middle School. I will take a motion first and then we can discuss, and I understand I hope Langston has some comments to make as well. Is there a motion to hire a 7-hour per day English learner educational assistant for the remainder of the 23-24 school year for Northfield Middle School, and a .20 EL teacher to serve at the recently arrived English learner students at the school St. Dominic for the remainder of the school year, and that would eliminate transportation costs and maintain our student teacher ratio at the middle school. This would be for an estimated cost of $76,701. Moved by Noel, second. Second by Amy, thank you. Okay, Hope, did you want to make some comments? Yes.
Okay, thank you for your support of our EL students. I do want to let you know that as of last Thursday, we have officially enrolled and have started 3 new EL students who are not testing at the newcomer level 1. They are somewhat higher, but we just got word also that four newcomers, true newcomers, will be enrolling right after Thanksgiving. So that is an add of 7 kids just since last week. The newcomers that will be arriving, 2 are going to be at the middle school and 2 are at Greenville. And I'm making you aware of this tonight because it continues to be a situation that changes literally weekly. And it is highly likely that I will be back in front of you asking for additional support to cover this increased enrollment. At this point, right now, we are 30 kids higher than we were last year. So it's significant.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is the grant writing contract with Healthy Community Initiative. I'll take a motion first and then we can discuss. Is there a motion to approve the contract with HCI for the equivalent of a halftime grant writing position, service hours of 1,730 for 20 months, dedicated to working with school district staff with the total maximum contract fees up to $75,000 through June 30th, 2025. Okay, moved by Jenny, second by Jeff. Are there, let's see, are there any questions? We can direct those to Val. Okay. Any questions or comments on the contract? Yep, very good. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We have item C, co-curriculum add. Okay, district administration is requesting authorization to hire 1 additional coach for the Knowledge Bowl at Northfield High School for an estimated cost of $2,153. currently have 45 students in the Knowledge Bowl program with only 2 coaches, students who remain unsupervised during practices and during competition. And we stated that they have volunteers to assist to ensure that there's compliance with competition requirements. Board members are asked to consider hiring an additional coach for Knowledge Bowl at the Northfield High School for an estimated cost of $2,153. Is there a motion to hire a new coach as presented? Moved by Corey, second. By Amy, is there any, thank you, Amy. Are there any comments or questions about this ad? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item 8 is items for information, and first up is an enrollment option and history report. Student Information System and Specialist Christine Nessett and Director Murdersdorf have provided the 2023-24 enrollment options and history report. And we will now hear a review of the report. Item B is the enrollment report proper, and that'll be a review of November 2023's enrollment report. Would you like to do one and then the other?
Yep, I will start with the enrollment options report because that was listed first. So in your packet, you have the annual enrollment options report, and this is really our annual summary of the impact of school choice in our district. And so you can see Northfield had 476 students that came to attend Northfield Public Schools from other school districts, compared to 464 last year. We have 817 resident students that are choosing something other than Northfield Public Schools, which includes 287 going to other public schools, 244 to charter schools, 174 students going to homeschools, and 112 going to non-public schools. Last year, that number was 839. And so when we look across, you can see all the detail is on this first report. And then the last page is a different summary that shows some of the historical comparison as well. And really what I'd like you to take away is that we are still seeing a decline in the net out. So we are proud supporters of our charter schools here. And so we're always going to have a net deficit due to that dynamic here. But we obviously support the school choice. We're one of 2 districts in the state that authorize charter schools. And so you can see we had 375 net out last year, and it's 341 this year. And that really means that we're retaining more students, which is obviously a benefit to the district and to our overall enrollment. And so we have 34 more students net than we did in the prior year, if that makes sense. And really, I think the other thing I'd like to highlight is we have more, almost 200 more students that choose Northfield Public Schools than another public school. So we had 476 students choosing Northfield Public Schools, and going out was 287. So 189 students coming in if we are looking just at the public school options. So that's definitely a direction we like to be. Overall, pretty stable comparatively to the prior years. So any specific questions on the enrollment options report?
Hey, Jeff.
You expecting to see any decline? I mean, over the next, because I mean, the projection is for it to go down. So, I mean, is that over 10 years you're talking about? I mean, because we really haven't seen that much change in the last couple of years.
So not specifically on this report. We have seen declining enrollment the last 4 years, and we are projecting that to continue. This year actually was a stable year. There was a higher birth rate about 5 years ago. We had a blip. And so this year has been pretty stable and where we were expecting it, which I'll talk about on the next enrollment report, but we are still projecting a decline. So we are under, the 4,000 kind of average that people talk about. We're closer to 3,800, 3,750, in terms of overall enrollment that is revenue generating.
And I think we kind of did talk about a little bit about that 3,800 is kind of more the new normal.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, okay.
Yep.
Amy.
I know your answer might be anecdotal, but I can't help but notice the difference between the number of students we get from Faribault to the number that we send off to Faribault. And I'm wondering if that's because there are students who are officially in the Faribault School District who actually live closer to Northfield, or if you have any sense why we're bringing so many in.
You would be correct about anecdotal. I would say there's probably the same number of reasons as there are students that are coming here. It certainly could be where they live comparatively to our boundary. It could just be reputation. I imagine there's several different reasons that people choose to come here. I know we have staff that live in Faribault that work here and so likely bring their students as well. So I'm sure there's many more reasons.
Do
but
we
those
ever
are the
ask
three.
them why they're choosing? That would be an interesting question to ask as they enroll here.
I do think there's some of that information on the enrollment form. I don't know that we collect it in an efficient manner where we would be able to kind of isolate that, but I think my gut says there's probably a multitude of reasons that would not necessarily be similar across the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Corey.
Quick math question for you, Val. I know
On
your
the
favorite.
spot math, all right.
So 3,800 and 4,000 total students probably doesn't seem like a huge difference, but can you just tell people watching what 200 fewer students means for funding for us?
Yes, so each student in Northfield brings approximately $10,000 of revenue, so roughly $2 million less operating revenue annually. Yep. That was easy math. Thank you for that.
Very good. Jenny, you have a question?
Actually, mine's not on the options report. It'll be on the.
Oh, okay, we'll wait then. Thank you. Right.
So then the monthly enrollment report, which you are used to seeing, is, I would say, pretty consistent. We're up about 8 students over our October 2nd count. A little bit here and there all over the place, up 8 total and about 16 over what we are currently projecting for the budget. So that is a great place to be from my perspective. Anytime we have more students than what I projected means the revenue will, in theory, come in a little bit better. So overall, pretty standard update for that.
Good. Okay. Jenny, you had a question?
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Val, also. So my question on the enrollment report is that in comparing our online school, which was Portage last year, we were at 93. And now for Big 9 Online, we're at 34. Have we kept in touch with the families to find out, did they leave because they don't like the new option, or, have they come into our district schools, or do you know?
I know a little. So we did keep track of where students went. And my understanding, the last time we discussed this was that about a third of them came back to Northfield. Another third chose something else, and it could have been a public school, private school, another online school, and then about a third went to the Big 9 Online. So that's my rough data on where we believe everybody went.
I appreciate the update.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Val.
Yep, you're welcome.
Right, we're on to item C, items for information. American Education Week is this week, November 13th through the 17th. The National Educators Association marks this week, the week prior to Thanksgiving, as a time to celebrate public education and all the adults that support students in public education. Northfield Public Schools recognizes and appreciates the team of people who work each day to prepare every student for lifelong success by developing critical thinkers who are curious and ready to engage in our society. during this week-long celebration. Item D, our board work sessions are scheduled 5:30 to 7:30 PM in the Northfield High School Media Center on Thursday, November 16, Monday, December 4, and Tuesday, February 20. Item 9, our future regular meetings are on Monday here in the district office boardroom. That'll be Monday, November 27, Monday, December 4, and Monday, December 11th. That is all the business that we have tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, moved by Noel, second by Jeff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.